Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan. Once again, it's Austin, the Day Ghost, and tonight we're doing a request for you. It's request month. No, we're not doing that anymore. It's not.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
not. It's not Predator. We're doing
Forgot
Star
my shirt.
Wars. Like, yeah, we should have changed shirts. Tonight we're doing some Star Wars Legacy. This was requested a long time ago. By Ian McKee. He had a standing request for Star Wars Legacy and for Smallville Season 11, and I got a few videos up from those, but not nearly as many as I should have, and so we're finally getting to some of this. So my apologies for how long it's been to Ian. This is why we're doing Request Month, to get some of these back requests finally knocked out. And years ago, and this was not from a request, Eric and I did the first trade of Star Wars Legacy, the first 6 or 7 issues, must have been 7. And because I think the first arc is 6 plus a fill-in issue about stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been meaning, of course, to do the second trade for the longest time, and I thought instead of just coming in and doing a part 2 of a thing that I did years ago, I would bring on Austin, who's never read this stuff, and we would kind of start from the beginning, but focus more on the back end of this stuff, because I have talked about the first few issues before. So I'll let Austin talk more about that stuff, and we'll talk about this kind of more broad overview, because it's a lot of issues, it's a lot of material, it's a lot of story, and a lot of characters to keep track of. There's a lot going on in Legacy, and it's insane what Ostrander is able to pack into these first 13 issues. It's got a lore all of its own. It's very Star Wars, but it's also like so complex it could almost be its own thing, I think. And I've always really liked what I've read of Legacy. Real quick before we get into it, let me also say that part of the reason it's been so long since I've talked about this is I actually sat down and read the first like 30 to maybe even 40 issues, so like very nearly the whole run of the first volume, because I was going to talk about it all together like I did the Guardians request you did a long time ago,
This is my first
Austin.
request. Yeah.
I think I reviewed like 25 issues at once or something, and
Yeah, and all I said was, could you look at this? And it was my first request, so I was like, I don't know how many issues is like appropriate task. So I just went, you be the judge. I don't know. Just read as much as you want. Like, just take a look at that. And you read the entire thing.
And I
Like,
don't usually do that, and I don't take requests that big, especially these days. So I've kind of changed how I do this a little bit, because I don't want to make promises I can't keep, and that's absolutely what I did with this. Because in doing a in doing a standing request like that, because of the backlog and how many folks, and thanks to everybody that participates in this and supports the channel through request, we always have a 3 to 4 month wait if I'm doing this on a weekly basis, and trying to keep track of everything that happened in a thing between like for 3 or 4 months before you talk about it again is really daunting. And frankly, this material was really kind of challenging for me. I was kind of intimidated by it, and so I read all that stuff over Christmas break, and I was going to sit down and talk about it, and I just didn't, like, I wasn't able to take a lot of notes, and I was like worried that the video would be terrible, and I never sat down and made it. And I was like, I'll finally do it in arcs, and then that never ended up happening. So anyway, I felt terrible about it. It's one of the many reasons I felt the need to do Request Month, and we're finally going to talk about some of this. And Austin, if you're interested, I would love to not wait 4 months and bring you back and start just getting the series knocked out if we can find time to do it, because I owe it to Ian, and I also want to finish it, because this stuff is really interesting, and I don't know how articulate I'll be about it, because I'm still trying to keep all of the like various moving pieces straight for myself. Some of this stuck with me, some of it didn't. And even though I've read well past this, I'm still going to be surprised by some things, because I can't remember everything that happens. It's been like 3 years, I think. 2 or 3 years since I read. Has it been that long? Since I read all of that. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into it. Austin, why don't you give us a real brief, maybe not synopsis, because there's so much that happens with this, but just kind of a foundation of like the premise of this book. What is Legacy about?
okay. Dun, 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 dun. space. In 100 years after Return of the
There are
Jedi.
heroes on both sides.
There are heroes on both sides. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. Um, yeah, so we're 100 years after Return of the Jedi, and we are now dealing with a. Okay, so Luke had his Republic, or like, Luke and like those characters back in the day had their kind of new Republic after the Empire, which then fell and became an Empire, and then all this stuff happened, and now it's another Empire that took over from that Empire, and that first Empire became the Rebels, and then the Jedi's went off and they got separated like at the end of the prequels.
And if this sounds redundant and repetitive, it's on purpose. It's about a vicious cycle.
hmm No, it's looking at that like the George Lucas poetry thing of Star Wars is like a thing, like a cycles that keep repeating, and they are at least talking about it. So it's not like my thing I have with a lot of Star Wars where it's just creatively bankrupt and can't move from stuff. Like this is at least talking about that. But yeah, so you have uh, like a descendant of Luke Skywalker who is Cade Skywalker, sorry. Um, he's Cade Yeager, and he is basically the
I
Han
hate
Solo.
you. I was gonna make that joke.
He is Luke Skywalker and Han Solo together, where
Mm-hmm.
he is like the rogue character, but he's also the Jedi that has to come up and unite everybody, and maybe he'll do that. I don't know. We're not there yet, but you have a new Emperor who is
Darth
Darth
Crate.
Krayt. Yes,
Yeah, he's got a great name.
yeah, Darth Krayt is not great, but he's got a ton of Sith. He's basically made a like kind of how the Jedi's are, where there's like a ton of Jedi's together. He has that with the Sith, and
He
there's
got
like a
rid of
whole
the
thing
rule of
about how.
two.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he and Cade are both breaking rules on both sides. Like, Cade's not a traditional Jedi, and he rejects the Jedi Order out of hand, but even when he's there, he rejects a lot of things about the Jedi. Crate does exactly the same thing on the other side with the Sith. And are
Yeah,
both told by Force ghosts why they're wrong.
yeah, exactly. No, the Force ghosts in this are like your parents that knock on your door and they're like, "Hey, you're wrong. Stop. Like, go outside and get a job." Uh, but yeah, that's basically it. Like it's Star Wars. It's very much what you expect from Star Wars, but also with layers of something that's different. Um, and yeah,
I've always seen Legacy as kind of doing a mix of like traditional original trilogy stuff, like what you came to Star Wars for, uh, turning a lot of things on their heads certainly, and making it about the shades of gray and not just the black and white dark side versus light side, but also taking all the stuff that Lucas wanted to do with it, with the prequels in particular, and with his first draft script, and trying to actually make that stuff work in a good character-driven Star Wars thing. So like it's got the like layered complex politics that the prequels were trying to pull off, and it's got a lot of intrigue and a lot of backstabbing and a lot of conspiracy and that kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly. You're kind of bouncing back and forth between what you expect from Star Wars, where it's like go go go, space adventure, and that kind of like you said, like the political intrigue, and just lots of like leaders and politicians just kind of meeting in that like bureaucracy that you don't really see in the original trilogy, but that he tried to bring into with the prequels.
Yeah, and so many different factions. Like it's not just your empire and your rebellion, and then the Sith are secretly behind the empire. It's a whole bunch of different factions. So you have the traditional things that are like trying to hold on, and then you have like uh, group like political groups that it never attempted to work together before, that all have to band together in order to fight a crisis, which is, I don't think you brought this up, the big backstory for this is, like even before the story begins, there are aliens that come from another galaxy that there's a big war against, and the Empire, which is a more benevolent empire with a more benevolent emperor, has to team up with the Jedi and several other and like a galactic sort of federation, and I forget what they're called, and some other groups in order to fight this threat. And then the Jedi try to help the aliens integrate into not just society, but just physically our realm, because they can't live here. It's that kind of Kryptonian Man of Steel thing where they have to terraform. And you find out that the Sith are secretly pulling themselves back together and create this coup where this is also complicated. There's just a lot going on, but you have the Sith trying to frame the aliens so that they can get back into power again and try to splinter these groups off, and it ends up working. And the end of all of that ends up being Darth Krayt setting himself up as kind of the new Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, exactly.
And that all leads to the death of Cade Skywalker's father, and where his motivations start, and all of that.
That is correct. Yeah, you have your kind of flashback or prologue issue where you deal with Cade's backstory, which is the death of Cole Skywalker, which is where you get the whole like the Order 66 thing, where like the Sith come down and they destroy the Jedi Temple and they kill everybody there, and
You're
the rest
right.
of the
You
Jedi
even
are
still
separated.
you even still have that where you once again you have Jedi spread out throughout the galaxy, and there's only a few of them left, and the Empire has taken back over again. But it's different now because loyalties are all over the place, and that's what really separates it from the traditional, like, again, Empire versus the remnants of Old Republic, or the rebels, because nobody really knows where anybody stands after Krayt takes over. Like, he has people working for him that he can't trust because they're actually loyal to the original Emperor, who really looks like a character out of the Star Wars, like out of
Is
George
that the
Lucas's.
DC reboot of Star Wars?
No, George Lucas's original first draft script that Dark Horse adapted.
Okay,
The art in that, a lot of the kind of more classic, old school, like 40s looking sci-fi serial outfits come into this. So like we're even cribbing from that stuff. Now that was. Or at least that look, because obviously that was adapted well after this. But I always got the sense that that's more or less what Lucas was thinking Star Wars would look like. Something more like a who am I trying to think of? Throw out an old sci-fi serial, like a Buck Rogers.
Flash
No,
Gordon,
no,
or
Flash Gordon more than Buck Rogers. Yeah, exactly. Where you have more like flashy capes and a lot of buttons and that kind of stuff. Where like it looks more like Dune or something.
Yeah, when it's got that, I think it goes back to like Greece, but that idea that when you have capes, like that means you're like somebody of importance, which I guess is something that Jack Kirby thought about a lot, and is why Doctor Doom was given a cape design-wise. But yeah.
Edward Bedore says, so what you're telling me is Legacy is Star Wars Game of Thrones, but it's a comic book. Yeah, essentially.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, like it's a lot of that kind of political intrigue and, again, backstabbing and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's hard not to just spend the first, like, 15 minutes of this video just setting up what this is. And also, we have a lot more information coming into this than Eric and I did when we did just the first 7 issues, because a lot of the background that informs all of the politics, you actually don't get until like issue 8 or 9. I think 8 is that big flashback issue that kind of gets back into what you got in the first issue, but delves a lot further into it and brings in even more characters that are relevant to all of that.
Mhm. Yeah, there's kind of as you go, you get like pieces of the story where it's almost like an event, right? Where you have like the broad strokes, but then you have issues later on that are like the tie-ins, where that's where you kind of take like those moments and you expand on them,
Yeah. Yeah, 8
which is
is
like what your episode 8 or issue 8 is.
that's I think the issue that introduces that like master manipulator woman with the brother who wants to sit on the throne. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. Calixte.
Oh yeah, click site I think
She's
is how I pronounced it when I was
yeah,
reading it.
she's one of the you know big high-ranking Imperials. We already have some super chats, and I will read those in just a second. Thanks so much for the support and for participating in the conversation. But before that, I just want to know uh, what Austin's first impression of this whole thing is, because Austin and I have never talked Star Wars together, and I know you've told me that you've been in kind of a weird place with Star Wars for a long time, and I feel like I'm kind of making you go back to material that you're not necessarily really into anymore. So, just what is your feeling about this book? First impressions.
Yeah, so I used to be a really big Star Wars fan when I was a kid, and then uh, into like the Disney era made me go, yeah, I'm not really a Star Wars fan. And it's not that Disney killed Star Wars thing, because I feel like Star Wars killed Star Wars. Like this goes back to Lucas. This is not a Disney thing with me. But for me, Star Wars is kind of just those original 3 movies. And um, this book, I think, is pretty good. I still have that, like, I'm just not a Star Wars fan anymore, so it's not like, oh man, like this is like great, like I love this, but like it's good. Like I can't deny that. Um, it's just, this series that I'm kind of love lost on, unfortunately.
Well, and
Um,
Ostrander is one of those writers that has a level of quality. I don't know that I've read an Ostrander
Ostrander's
thing
a great writer,
that I just
exactly.
didn't care for. Like
Yeah,
the
and I
man knows
recommend everybody read
he's
his Suicide Squad. It's fantastic, and he does a great job with this book.
he's always got a command of narrative. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's a really good world builder.
Mhm. No, reading it, it was like, man, if only I'd read this like 5, 10 years ago, this would be the greatest thing ever. But it's like, I'm trying to think of like a perfect way to describe this. I guess in a way, it's kind of like you with the Suicide Squad, where like the Suicide Squad's great, but it's not really your thing. So like
Yeah.
you just kind of look at it and you're like, eh. And I probably like this a little. Actually, I don't know, because there's like aspects of that movie that you like quite a lot, but it's probably somewhere around there for me, where it's like this is really good, but there's just a divide that's hard for me to get past, unfortunately. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is what it is.
To be fair, this grabbed me real hard a few years ago, and I still really like it, and I
Hmm.
still kind of wish that this is more of what we were doing in adapting Star Wars, just like moving further ahead and like not being stuck telling kind of the same story over and over again, and all of that. But like going back and rereading it, some of the novelty of it is worn off a little bit, I guess. Like, some of what was really exciting about this to me is just I had not really latched on to any EU stuff. And and I just hadn't read that much, but this was the first thing where I was like, "Oh, this could be like my Star Wars." I'm kind of a sucker for futuristic versions of things sometimes. Like I love Spider-Man 2099. I love Batman Beyond. Sometimes when you take a thing and you throw it like real far into the future of a uh, continuity that I'm really invested in, or lore that I like a lot, I kind of can't deny that it's really fun to like go in the future and deal with like futuristic technology and all of that. This even though it's Star Wars, and so like the future thing is all relative. It's not like, oh look, it's like the uh 20 like late 21st, early 22nd century, got flying cars. Like, it's still Star Wars. But there still is a little bit of that where it's like, this is punk rock Star Wars. This is like emo and like goth Star Wars, and it maybe dates it a little bit, but I also
Yeah.
but I also kind of like that about it. Like, it's such a product of its time that it dates it and it doesn't, because it like, I don't know. There's a lot of 70s in Star Wars, and so this is like 90s Star Wars, which I
No,
realize
this
it's
is
later than that, but
this is,
it's still very 90s, even though it comes out in the 2000s.
yeah. No, this is Star Wars is it's not a phase mom phase. Um,
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's tongue in cheek about it. I think it knows it's doing that.
no, I think so too. A mixture of this and watching Prey made me like really miss classic Dark Horse.
Yeah.
It's like, even if this isn't like something that I love, it's like, there's just a flavor of old Dark Horse that you go back to, and it's like, man, like Dark Horse was awesome, and then
Well,
Disney took everything they had.
and like Prey, a lot of the fun for me with this is atmosphere and aesthetic and stuff. There's dicey art in this, don't get me wrong, and the art shifts way too much.
Yeah.
But a lot of the character designs that people latch onto, like Darth Talon, like I absolutely did. That's a brilliant character design, and there's several of those in this book. And so like some of it is superficial, some of it's just like, it was me feeling like I finally got where people were coming from, like kids that grew up that were in love with Star Wars. Like, I grew up and Star Wars was fine, but I didn't have that thing where I was just where my imagination ran away with itself like it did with a lot of kids. And I finally kind of had that with Legacy, where it was like, here's just this totally new aesthetic I haven't seen, which is cool because it's such a blend of aesthetics, right? Like, there's so much original trilogy and prequel stuff all blended together, and I always loved the aesthetic and the feel of episode 1, at least, and just didn't get a good story to go with it. And then this kind of gave me that, and I realized people have that with Clone Wars era stuff, but this was fun because it was moving forward, and because I didn't have to deal with the Clone Wars, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But we get to move forward instead of ruining everything in the past.
Well,
We just get to move forward and do new stuff.
Yeah, well, and you suggested that maybe one of the reasons you didn't latch onto this super hard is because you were just sort of like done with Star Wars, and like you said, Star Wars ruined Star Wars. That's actually part of why I like it so much, because it's like a catharsis for me. I was kind of noodling this. Like, I feel like this is a treatise on some of the stuff that doesn't work in Star Wars and why, and finding really creative ways to make a great narrative out of it anyway. I was noodling this really hard earlier today, where I was like, I should really detest Cade Skywalker. Like, everything about him is irritating for me, usually. And, like, for some reason, I can't hate the guy. It's not Spawn. Like, he is pretty whiny about things, and he is refusing to change in a bad way, and he's got like all the right people telling him to shape up, and he's not listening to anybody, and like some of that is sympathetic. I get it to a certain degree, but at some point you get 13 issues in and you're like, okay, like wake up finally, you know what I mean? Like, figure yourself, get over yourself, dude. And there's a part of my brain that's saying all those things, but as I'm reading it, I'm not hating him, and I think I figured out why, Austin. Because Cade Skywalker is a disgruntled Star Wars fan.
I'm a punk rock music guy, so that makes sense.
That's what he is,
I'm
right?
Cade Skywalker, yeah. Yeah.
He's going, I don't understand why the Jedi bother with a galaxy that doesn't care about them and just screws them all the time. I'm
over
really...
and over, and nothing changes.
Yeah, he says, I'm done with this universe, is basically what he's saying. He's a disgruntled Star Wars fan.
No, he's me complaining that Star Wars is creatively bankrupt.
Yeah, that's exactly what he is. Can
I
we
hadn't
go
thought
ahead and
about that.
knock
That's
out a
really
few of these
funny.
super chats before we get more deep into some of this?
Hmm.
Because there are quite a few. Bob the Hun. Okay, I'm just reading a super chat, you guys. I kind of expected this to come up, but maybe not first. Bob the Hun says, "Who wants to do it with Talon?" Thoughts, Austin.
Um, she's a series of painted lines. Nah, um,
The
I don't know.
sexuality in this book would have been an elephant in the room if it didn't come up right away, so maybe we might as well just address it right away.
It is peak like comic book. Like every woman has like the
The
cut off, and
midriff,
like, you
yeah,
know, you get shots where it's like on one side it's like our heroes, and the other side of the panel is just Talon's ass,
yeah.
and it's
There's a
like,
lot of butt shots, and yeah,
no, it
yep.
is like right peak in that era
It's
of
it's
comics.
a product of its time. Like I get why that puts people off. I get why we got past it for the most part. I have always said there's nothing wrong with women looking attractive and sexy in comics.
Mhm.
It's not straight up like sexist or wrong to draw women or men like with perfect and over the top bodies and stuff. But you can get over sexualized to the point where it feels like it's just TNA and it's up in your face about it, and that there's guys reading comics like this that aren't really looking at the words, you know,
Mhm.
and
That are reading it with one hand, yeah.
this is this is one of those books that and this just turned into an After Dark, but this is one of those books that really feels like um, it knows what the target audience is, and there's probably not a lot of girls reading this book, and it's not really for them, and that's kind of unfortunate because it's a great story, so like no reason to leave anybody out. But the Darth Talon design, like I said, I think it's a really cool design. I get why it took off like it did. But she's one of those characters that's not just superficial. She's really interesting. I
Because there's like so many characters, so it's like there was another character that I kind of kept getting her mixed with, but because she's the
well,
one.
there's another Sith, right? That's a scantily clad red chick, just like
Yeah,
her.
yeah, exactly. Who has the worst name in this book, which is Lady Milady. Uh,
Lady. Yep, and Ostrander makes fun of the name he picked because there's a place where somebody calls her Milady.
yeah. No, it'd be like if Luigi's last name was Waluigi, and they're like, "Yo, hey, Luigi, Waluigi."
I don't think her name is actually Milady. What is it? It's Milady.
Oh, okay. I see. I just pronounced it as
I guess you
Milady
could
the whole
pronounce it
time.
Milady, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
there's a place where somebody actually calls her like M apostrophe lady, and it's
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, but yeah. I just read the entire time to me as Lady Milady. I was like, wow, that's a name.
Uh,
But yeah, because her design talent is she's basically like female Darth Maul. But does she have the like things? I can't remember now.
yeah, she
It's
does.
Yeah, so she's kind of like Lady Darth Maul mixed with. Oh yeah, there she is. Mixed with the people from Felocia.
Yeah,
It's been so
and
long.
those are in
I've
here
like
too.
deleted Star Wars. Yeah, yeah. Well, and one of our Jedi's is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You have a brother sister duo in
Yep.
this.
Yeah, because they're like
Sorry, I
the
gotta
more
skip ahead. I
traditional
was
blue
gonna
ones.
get some talent in action. There you go. Um, but yeah, her just like ruthless loyalty to whoever is the head of the Sith is really interesting, and she's super mysterious, just like Darth Maul, and she feels like
She has
Darth
a
Maul.
character unlike Darth Maul.
She feels like Darth Maul realized, yeah, and in the first place, I get that people like
Yeah.
him later in Clone Wars and stuff, but this is before all of that.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, Star Wars has a history of creating like a cool design that's like a good toy, and then fans love them, and then background material goes, okay, let's try to flesh this out.
Well, that's one of the things that turned me off to Star Wars when I was a kid, where I would latch onto a character that I thought was really cool, and then I just couldn't figure out anything about them. It was like there's nothing here. And again, I didn't look enough at EU because I had a Star Trek background, and I was like, not that I didn't want to read books and stuff, but just I couldn't get my head around. Oh, it's all supposed to be canon? Like, really? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
And like Lucas himself didn't see it that way, but the fans did.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and everybody, talks about the greatness of the EU, but the EU, in a way, is a dumping ground where, like, you get a lot of good, you also get a lot of, like, crap.
And there's got to be contradictory stuff too, certainly.
Oh, absolutely. So, you know,
But I like this stuff in a vacuum, even though it's connected to lots of other EU stuff that I've never read. Like, Mara Jade shows up. I know next to nothing about her, and I know she's a huge important character, and she was married to Luke Skywalker. I've never read anything with her in it. I don't know anything about that character.
mhm.
And so,
When it helps that she's never been adapted into anything.
yeah. So this is kind of a weird thing for me to just jump into because I do think it works on its own if you've seen at least, the movies. Because obviously it's borrowing from everything. But there are certainly blind spots.
Mhm.
And apparently Ostrander uses like a lot of his own lore and characters from stuff he did before this that I've not looked at. So like I never know what he's building on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because people talked about it too. He did some Clone Wars stuff, and I'm sure he's probably done stuff outside of that. But
Edward Bador,
oh,
$5.
can I read this one?
Sure, feel free.
Uh, They're heroes on both sides. I know the Sith. Very good Sith. Very good people. Believe me. There we go.
Thanks, Edward. Okay, so we've gotten that whole thing out of our system now, right? Edward put in another $5 super chat. Mystery Incorporated finally caught Lord. Although I will say that when you go back to that crawl and you read that after the whole Trump thing, it is kind of weird. Like it does feel like a thing he would write. I don't know, it's weird. Mystery Incorporated finally caught Lord Crate. The mastermind hiding under his mask is
news.
C-3PO.
Old man C-3PO.
No, we haven't seen C-3PO yet, but R2-D2 shows up in this, and I got a message from Austin where he's like, "There's no way he's still alive, like 120 something years later, or whatever it is."
My dad and I laugh constantly about how silly it is that R2-D2 is like, a droid that they use from the prequels all the way into the sequels. Just because of how fast tech moves nowadays and how stuff goes out of date. So the fact that 100 years later R2-D2 just rocks out and they're like, by the way, here's R2-D2. It was like 100 years later, he's still kicking. There's definitely moments that I had like that where it's like, really 100 years later we haven't moved past this? Like, still got the same Stormtrooper design, really?
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
Yeah.
And there didn't seem to be any real story reason for it.
It's just kind of like...
It wasn't like we've hung on to this design because of tradition or because we're trying to, like, bring the Empire back to its former glory. Like, keep in mind, this is a new, more benevolent Empire. It doesn't want to be corrupt like Palpatine's Empire, at least under Fel. Which is, by the way, a really prophetic name, and if your emperor's name is Fel, you should just assume you're going to at some point lose.
It's another weird thing. I don't know if you picked up on this.
There's a scene where the name Fel and the word fall is in dialogue together, and it's really funny.
Oh yeah,
Ostrander knows he's doing this. Like most of these names are prophetic or have something to do with a character trait. Like Cade is a cad, and that somehow makes him more endearing to me because at least the writer knows it. Like he's insufferable on purpose. Somehow it works better. At some point he has to start lightening up, and I'm pretty sure that happens not too far after this. But anyway,
Well, there's definitely moments in the book where I was like, oh, okay, we're finally kind of getting away from this, and then he would just double down. So it is going to be interesting to see moving forward when he starts to break out of that.
yeah, like when he decides to start training as a Jedi again, and then not too far after that, he has a whole diatribe about to his Jedi master, his former Jedi master, who he resurrected and now is his Jedi master again, about how he doesn't really want anything to do with the Jedi, and he's just doing this to be prepared for when he inevitably has to go up against Darth Krayt.
Yeah, and it seems like possibly we could be moving towards that now because where we end, Cade's going off to go save this Jedi that he turned in earlier on in the book.
Yeah. Let me read some more super chats real quick.
Yeah.
Chewbacca's Lover again, $5 super chat, or I'm sorry, not again, but the first time tonight. Thanks, Chewbacca's Lover. Ostrander wrote the 2000s Clone Wars comics, probably why he brought a lot of prequel stuff into the series. His Clone Wars series is also excellent. I've heard that. I've always wanted to read that. And I just haven't gotten to it because I haven't finished this. I don't want to look at any more Star Wars stuff until I'm finished with this thing I like a lot. I just haven't gotten around to finishing it.
When I haven't read much of the Clone Wars stuff, but like when I was into this, I read a ton of the like post Revenge of the Sith, pre A New Hope, but I don't like the prequels, and like nobody's ever won me over on the Clone Wars stuff. So maybe that book would, but probably not.
Well, you and I both have issues with just like some of the initial premise and setup of what's done with stuff in the Clone Wars, like what the clones are and all of that, and that makes it.
Yeah, I don't like it from a like I don't think their base is strong. So it's like you can build good stuff on top of it, but the base sucks. So it's like it's still to me gonna collapse in on itself.
Well, and I wondered if you would have that if you had that some with Legacy, because I know that there's basic EU stuff that you're not a big fan of, like the Rule of Two and all of that.
Yeah, but it's just kind of I don't know. I just got to accept it. It's kind of
that's
like
where I am with it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't think that's interesting, but I just kind of have to like just roll with the punches.
Here I think it is kind of interesting because I like the idea of a Sith Lord getting smart enough to look at what the Jedi are doing, what the light side is doing, that's working better, but he still is like using the dark side, so it's not like he's gonna full tilt just become Jedi, but it's like, well, I'm going to use my anger because it's easier and we can be more powerful if we try to bend the Force to our will. That's like the big difference between the Jedi and the Sith, is that the Jedi are more Zen and they're going to try to work with nature instead of trying to force nature to work for them. But he's like, but you guys have a lot of numbers and we lose a lot because we get these big wars with you and there's one of us. There's a lot of you.
No, that's the way in which Darth Krayt is, again, the disgruntled Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
In which he's like, excuse me, like Captain Kirk, walks up and he's like, the Rule of Two just came from the original three had two, and then we decided that was the mythos? Why? Make more.
Thomas Lowe 86. Wow, you guys are seriously doing 2 shows in one night. Respect. Here's $5. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Prey dropped today, and we really wanted to talk about that, but we already had this planned for the docket, so we were like, we'll just work them both in. Edward Medora, another $5 super chat. Thanks so much. I am not into Star Wars anymore. Why? The nostalgia hunting. Yeah. The only things Disney did I liked were Last Jedi and Mandalorian Season 1, which did new things. I don't know that... I mean, one thing I really appreciate about this series is that it's able to go back and crib from lots of things that you're familiar with, but I don't but it doesn't come off like nostalgia baiting. It feels like just using the lore and the mythos, and it's not constantly like throwing out lines of dialogue that you're super familiar with. And
No, we don't even get a I have a bad feeling about
I
this,
haven't seen that yet. Yeah.
yeah, which is in all of the movies, except Ryan Johnson wanted to be cute about it, so it's in like beeps in The Last Jedi.
Oh,
But
was that how he did that? I didn't even
yeah,
realize
it's the
that.
first
Okay.
line of dialogue, and it's in beeps, and it's like, you're not as clever as you think you are. Stop it. But anyways, uh, that's the thing that I think is interesting to me about Star Wars, and like what you just said with the nostalgia hunting,
Yeah.
is that okay? Last Jedi did new things. It's really just Empire and the climax of Return of the Jedi thrown into a blender. So it's not, like Force Awakens, where it's, beat for beat the same. But and then the Mandalorian is, the adventures of not Boba Fett and Baby Yoda. So it's like these are the ways in which Star Wars can get away from itself, but it also can't. And then, yeah, I had no interest in season 2 of The Mandalorian because it was just like, hey, remember all these characters? We're throwing them in, and I don't care.
Well,
But anyways, that's my diatribe.
I don't want
I'm
to get wrapped
sorry.
up in all of that too much, but what I appreciate about this versus the way Disney has handled, like, the repetition in Star Wars and like repeating history and stuff, is that Ostrander is making a really good case for this is just, and I think I talked about this with Eric too, but this is just what happens with civilization and with governments, right? Is whenever you forget history, you end up repeating it. And so if the bad guys take over, they're going to amass too much power and be corrupted by it, and then they're going to oppress people to the point where they just can't have it anymore, and they're going to get ripped down by a rebellion. And then when the rebels take over, they'll create peace, but then they'll eventually get complacent and apathetic, and it'll be too easy for some bad guys to come in and take their power and be corrupted by it, and the whole vicious cycle happens again. And that's what this whole book is about. And then it's some characters getting smart about it and going, how can we stop this from happening constantly? And what you end up with is like really weird, interesting blends of characters. Like you suggested that Cade Skywalker is Luke and Han at the same time. We have a princess in this that is kind of Luke and Leia together at the same time. There's a lot of kind of homogenized blends of various things to make the point that there might be something like smarter in between just the light side on one side and the dark side on the other side, because after all the force is about balance. You have to have both. So like it's Ostrander kind of challenging a lot of the basic ideas in Star Wars going all the way back, while simultaneously showing a lot of reverence for them also.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. No, it's a lot of just building off of what of Star Wars is and doing the ideas that he wants to do and kind of putting a magnifying glass onto different aspects of the series and really looking into it. And it ultimately kind of plays Star Wars like the Empire and like the Republic, like in those two kind of basic senses, are almost like um, like you're liberal and conservative in politics, where it's just a pendulum, right? Like it just goes back and forth. Like it'll be this for a little bit, and then it swings back, and it goes
And
to
there
that.
are and there
And
are like ideas in the middle.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Edward Bedore, another $5 super chat. The Clone Wars is just like Star Trek TNG. First two seasons are bad, and some of the bad is required viewing. It gets good in season 3 onwards. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. And when I've gone back and tried to look at, jumped around a little bit, looked at some of that show, I tend to watch like sample episodes from after those two seasons. My kids have been watching that some lately and enjoying it. But anyway, okay, Austin, why don't you take us to a major story point with this, and we'll just kind of dive in a little bit because there's so much going on. Like
Oh God, yeah. Where is
where
my dart
where
hitting
do
on
we
this
start?
dartboard?
Well, let me ask you this: what did you think was the most interesting aspect or subplot, uh, like with this story, like so
Um,
far? Like
I
what did you latch on to the most?
I think the issue that I liked the most so far, and it's funny because it's one of the last ones that we did, but it's the big I keep wanting to call him Cade Yeager, Cade Skywalker,
Skywalker, yeah.
where he kind of goes in on himself, and we really kind of discuss, why he became the Han Solo-ish rogue, instead of going the Luke Skywalker path, and we kind of talk about uh, his issues with his father and how he's like is like kind of skirting the dark side because he like wants to do things himself, and he's kind of frustrated with how that went when his father was killed, and how he kind of blames that on himself, and like how that just kind of wraps into his like motivation and mindset. That's probably the thing that I liked most about this.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're talking about the same issue. Are you talking about the like, uh, and it's a really interesting conversation. The pages and pages of argument with him and his Jedi Master.
Yes, yeah. Which like I don't know, I can't remember what it starts with an S.
Sazin, Wolf Sazin.
Season. Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff's great. Where he's saying the Jedi are like a slave to this vicious cycle,
Hmm.
and I don't want to be a part of that. And Sazin takes him down a peg and says, but you are also a slave, and uh, like you're a slave to your fear and to your addiction, and uh, like really breaks down why he's been doing all of the crazy stuff he's been doing throughout the entire book. And I was surprised to be as satisfied as I was not getting that. Like not fully understanding it until we get to that point, because I think Kate is a really complex character, and I think he's a really good stand-in for just rebellious youth in general. Like it kind of makes you, it kind of takes you back to like high school a little bit, and to various points in history where like the youth want to rebel against society because they're disgruntled about their how authority is doing them dirty. And he's got a you really appreciate where he's coming from, but he's also handling things so completely wrong. Like I like that there's this wonderful disconnect where the Jedi definitely messed up some things, and this is one of those places where Ostrander is saying like maybe the Jedi during the Clone Wars era didn't really make any sense. And maybe when Luke brings them back, they made some of the same mistakes again. And I haven't read the EU period where very much of that happens, so I don't. If some of that is there, I don't know about it. But at exactly the same time as some authorities made mistakes, you also have Sazin talking about the Force and what the Jedi are supposed to be about, exactly the way Yoda did in Empire. Like
Hmm.
Ostrander really gets the philosophy and why it makes sense. And the problem isn't the philosophy; it's that people don't know how to not be corrupted by it or use it incorrectly, or to not be like turned to the dark side.
Yeah. Yeah, and we get, I think, at least a whole issue, if not maybe two, where we're getting like just discussions about this and no real action. And it's, something that I don't think Star Wars outside of comics has really been able to do, which is besides, stuff like that in Empire, but I just mean like moving forward, um, which is like stop and have like actual meaningful conversation and
Yeah,
not just be more than a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, and the ways in which this feels more like a science fiction thing than a fantasy thing,
Which the
Ostrander's
EU
just
definitely
brilliant
has
about.
aspects of it, kind of goes back and forth where people go more sci-fi with it.
But I think, yeah, and I think it's just blended really well, where like the fantasy aspects aren't lost, but it's so much more human condition than Star Wars usually is, and I think that's probably why I latched onto it as hard as I did, because I'm so much more of a science fiction guy and I'm so much more of a character guy. Um,
Mhm.
I love all the talk about uh, and this is usually not my thing, but Ostrander handles it so well. All of the Destiny versus free will stuff in this is really well handled. The idea being that Cade does have a choice in what he does with his future. You're seeing him making all the wrong choices. It isn't like the prequels where everything happens because the Force willed it to, or because the Emperor was just like moving chess pieces around. Destiny means what the Force wants you to do, or what the however you like it, what the universe wants you to do because of your ability, because of your talent, because of what you were given by the Force or God or whatever it is. That kind of nuance difference between Destiny being we can't help but this happens to us versus uh, this is what we have and so we have a responsibility to use it. There's kind of that Spider-Man thing again, right?
Mhm.
Even Anakin Skywalker's Force Ghost tells Cade. See, now I want to say Jaeger too. Tells Cade
Right?
Skywalker, and I was doing that all day long too. And I was like, I'm not going to do it on camera. And then you said it, and
Kate
then
Yeager.
Cade Jaeger.
You're a Jedi, Kate Yeager.
But even Anakin Skywalker says you can't ignore your force power. Like you're so force sensitive because you're a Skywalker. You're so naturally gifted at this that you get to pick how you use it, but not that you use it. You can't just put it away, which is why you can't just stay on death sticks and just wallow in drugs forever.
Which I just had this thought while when you said that. Is that maybe part of why you latched onto this? Is because it's a bit of a Professor X and Days of Future Past thing going on with him?
Maybe so. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, where you have like he's doing drugs to like get rid of that, kind of force in his head.
Yeah, he's trying to deaden the pain. It just like Professor X, it takes away essentially his superpowers so that he doesn't have to, so that he can turn his back on his responsibilities. And it's because of a personal insecurity he has, where he's afraid of, uh, like doing the wrong thing, of going all the way to the dark side. But at the big difference, I guess, between him and Professor X is at the same time he's got this whole ends justifies the means thing, where when he does decide to act, he's making like every case for look, if I can bend the dark side or the force to my will through the dark side and use it for the right reasons, is it really wrong? And I think ultimately the book is going to come down on yes, that is wrong. Uh,
Hmm.
and his master is making all the right arguments against it, and Luke Skywalker as well. And his scenes, by the way, with Force Ghosts are really well written. He's totally in character and completely right every time, I think. But
Remember when Luke was Luke?
remember that?
Isn't that a quaint idea?
Edward Bador says not just any rebellious youth cap, but traumatized rebellious youth because Cade has the murdered parents superhero backstory mandatory for comics.
Well, and that's like a way that you kind of get back to the like root of Star Wars, right? Because there's so much comic books to those original movies to the point where your main hero is basically
Yeah.
Spider-Man and the main villain is Doctor Doom. You know, that's definitely baked into Star Wars in the first place.
There's a lot of that Empire argument that I was so fascinated with when I wrote the rewind on that movie, where of like, of course you want to go help your friends, but are you ready to?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which I
Like you
thought
have to
was.
figure yourself out before you can go, uh, like save people. And so, what's his name, Sazin? Um, he has. I forgot about this until just now. He has, again. I think it's that issue. This will be an entire discussion just about issue 11 of Star Wars Legacy. There's there's this part where he's talking about how Cade keeps saving people and it's actually ruining him. Where again, like doing the right thing, but in the wrong way or in the wrong order, and like every time he saves someone, it's for such selfish reasons that he's actually going farther down the path to the dark side.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what Yoda's worried about at the end of Empire. Is like you have to finish your and he doesn't spell it out as much as Sazin does here, but I always thought that that was the idea in Empire too. And like clearly Ostrander agrees with me. That the idea is Yoda needs him to finish his training because he's got to have self confidence and to like understand himself and find inner peace. That's talked about here.
Mhm.
Before he can be of help to anybody else, because he's a liability at that point. If he goes off and he tries to save his friends and he puts himself in a situation he's not ready for, how easy is it for him to use power he's not ready to and be corrupted by that?
Yeah, it's the idea that like charity starts at home. Like you got to work on yourself first. You got to start with the man in the mirror.
I'm gonna say that's probably the other reason I latched onto this as hard as I did when I first read it, is because
Mhm.
I love that philosophy in Empire so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and that's one of those great things. Just kind of look at Star Wars as a whole right now is that um, that's such like a good lesson in Empire where Luke, it's like, okay, Luke, like
Yeah,
you're not ready. Like if you go, like this is really bad. Like you shouldn't do this, and then he pays for that, as opposed to like the Last Jedi where it's like, okay, Ray, like don't do this. This is bad, and then she walks into the flagship of the Empire and is perfectly fine. She just walks away.
yeah.
um, but what was I going to say? There was something else. Oh, I'm interested to see moving forward because near the end of this, so Cade Yeager at the start has two people on his ship.
Stop saying that.
That was unintentional. I swear, that one was unintentional. It's so just
So
locked into
Kate
my
actually
brain.
is a legitimate Skywalker in a way that Ray is not.
Yeah, no, that one was completely unintentional. Now it's just locked into my brain, and I'm gonna have to fight this entire review now not to say it.
But
Uh,
yes, he has Sin and Blue.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And towards the end of this, they both get captured, and
And
I went,
Blue is not
okay,
the dog or the dinosaur. But anyway,
no.
I'm sorry, move on.
But she is blue. That is. Oh wait, no, she's pink. Never mind.
She's got blue hair.
She got blue. Nah, this is stupid. She should be fully blue. But anyways,
I'm
when they
sorry,
were
I've got to roll
captured, I
back here
went,
to
okay, this is
find these
gonna
guys.
be the Empire moment where he's gotta go rescue his friends and like avoid his training, and it doesn't. But he still ultimately does that by the end of the last issue we read because he's got to go save this Jedi that he gave up early on. So I'm interested to see how exactly that plays out.
Yeah, and there's kind of a question after the first arc as to how relevant Sin and Blue will even be.
Yeah, because I figured the princess would come back and she hasn't yet,
I
but
believe she
it,
does.
yeah, and I figured she would. But
I can't
the
remember
ending
if
of
she's a
that
love
first
interest
story
for
arc,
Kate ultimately or not, but yeah.
no, the ending of that first story arc plays like it could go either way on if any of those characters come back.
At least I thought she had blue hair.
Yeah, now I'm questioning it, but I
I can't
also
even
in a
find her
quick
right
moment
now
thought she was blue for some reason.
while I'm going through these. Yeah, she's got blue hair. There she is.
Yeah, there she is. She's blue and she believes she will die.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's another kind of eye candy thing or thing kind of just for the men in the audience where like she's real promiscuous.
Yeah, constantly. Like every panel she's drawn
She's
in.
just throwing herself but also like just throwing herself at Cade constantly.
Hmm.
Like, you can read between the lines. Everything she says to him is, when are we gonna go have sex finally? Like,
Yeah, which is a little weird seeing like a naked pink woman in a bed in one scene. It's like, hi, I guess I've never really seen that in Star Wars. It's a little strange. Comics are pervy. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, especially th- this is the period where we're just about to start getting away from some of that. But yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. No,
well,
this is the tail end of it.
let me ask you the question that I was kind of trying to ask earlier, or answer myself earlier. Do you like Cade Skywalker, or do you find him insufferable?
I don't find him insufferable. I'm not entirely sure where I fall on him yet because it's kind of like, okay, I know that he's going to get to a place and I'm kind of waiting for him to get there, and
Yeah,
the book keeps going, okay, he's getting there, and then he goes back. So
yeah,
it's not getting irritating or anything, but it's like I'm interested to see when we hit that.
yeah. I
And I
keep
hope they
feeling
don't
like,
drag it out for too long.
yeah, I keep feeling I should be just absolutely, done with him, and I'm not.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. No, it's he's good enough that you look past that. It's not the Spawn thing, like you said earlier. We haven't hit the point yet where Darth Krait's like slash his face off and he just ties it together with uh, with
Well,
a
and
shoestring.
well, and the big difference between him and Spawn is in their respective first issues. Uh, I mean, it helps that he doesn't have amnesia, but also in their respective first issues, I get the tragedy of Spawn, but I don't get to live with him for any amount of time before that happens. Like, he's just a mercenary for hire by the government that went to hell and wants to see his wife again. Like, that's kind of
Mhm.
it. And with Cade, you see him as a kid in the first issue, like being trained as a Jedi, trying to be a good Jedi, already questioning things interestingly about how they do things. Like, he does not do well with authority already, even before his tragic backstory. And then his father is killed, and it's not just the tragedy of that, but also of, like, it's sort of like if you did an early story about Superman where he used his powers for good, but everybody told him it was bad and he couldn't use them. That makes it so much worse. It's like his dad dies, he couldn't do anything to stop that, but his master dies or is on the brink of death, and he is able to save him or resurrect him, or however you want to read that scene with the lightning. And then he is told by Sazin and everybody else around him, and Sazin's the one he rescues. You can't do that. You're putting yourself too close to the dark side in order to do that. That's like torture for him, and like, I understand why he feels that way about it and why he wants to take the easy way out. Because if you're able to fly but you're told to go get a bus ticket, you're like, but why?
But why, sir?
Edward
uh,
Bador. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna make a joke and say Cade Skywalker
Yeah.
should be like Spawn and he should feign amnesia moving forward.
Uh, Edward Bador again, $10 super chat. Thank you so much. It is not examined as much as it should be, but Anakin's slave trauma led to his downfall because he craves attachments. Then the Jedi say emotion and attachment are bad, so no therapy, which Anakin needed. Which I've heard people postulate, and I'm sure that there are EU stories that actually get into that some. And that's an okay idea, except just in those movies, I never get the sense that he really went through anything difficult or traumatic as a slave. He doesn't feel like he has a slave life. Like,
Yippee!
yeah, everything that, like Watto seemed like an okay guy, you know? Like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have slaves, but like, he treated them like they had jobs and they just went home after work. I don't understand. So
I just want to know if Anakin still has the bomb in his brain after they take
yeah,
him away from Watto.
it's all theoretical with that stuff, right?
Hmm.
It's all like assumed. And with this, everything that we're told is supposed to be tragic, I actually am reading that on the page.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Erebor also, Cade Skywalker is very human, one of the most human characters in Star Wars. People dealing with trauma will have relapses and step backwards before growing. Treading
Hmm.
trauma is never a straight line. That's a terrific point. And I complain all the time about like Smallville and all kinds of other things. I complain all the time about characters being regressed in arcs where they'll learn something and then the next episode is a step back. Isn't the reason I'm not complaining about that with this is because it's believable and intentional. It
Hmm.
isn't like episodic, issue to issue. Okay, by the end of this, he's learned this clear, easy moral lesson, and he'll never do that again. And then in the next issue, he's forgotten everything he learned, and we never talk about the events that got him there. That's not what we're doing here. You're right, and that's probably why I don't hate him,
Well,
because
it's definitely a tightrope to walk, right?
it's tough. Yeah,
Hmm.
I knew what you meant, so we'll just move on. But yes, it's a tight rope to walk.
Oh, did I say it wrong?
Yeah, but that's fine. I just thought it
What
was
did I
funny.
say?
You said it's a tight rope to walk. Like it is a tight rope, but like that's not the expression, right? Like it's a see now that you've said it, I'm not sure what
No,
the
I'm
correct
pretty
expression
sure
is.
I'm right. I'm pretty sure it's a tightrope to walk on.
Anyway, uh, moving right along. Okay, so this panel's crazy. The like
Yes. See?
the massive.
Oh yeah. He turns into Darkseid. Or not Darkseid, Doomsday.
Yeah,
Uh,
crazy doomsday
he's
crate.
already got like Skyrim armor, and then there's
My
yeah,
apology, guys. It's really late for us right now.
that's correct. He's also got a little bit of a Shao Kahn thing going on with his like skull helmet.
Oh man, I can never remember that guy's name. How well are you following the political intrigue and all of the conspiracies and all of that?
I think it's like pretty digestible. Like it's not part of it is that it's not too much at all at once. Like it's just like okay, like we're gonna deal with this person now, and then we're gonna deal with that, and we keep expanding it. So it makes it a lot easier to follow.
Erebor again. Yes, the armor that is also an infection. Oh, that's what that was. Yeah, it's
Yes, because
like
that's they set that up when we meet the aliens from that other galaxy that the Jedi's are helping.
what are they called again?
Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head. But that was like the whole thing with them, because that's kind of it's a reveal of like that's what's happening to him, but they don't really play it like oh, that's what Darth Crate's going through. It's just they show you that thing and you can just like put it together. So it's nice that it wasn't spelled out.
Uh, I was on first read really shocked when we finally met those aliens, and uh, like really excited to get that because we keep talking about them constantly, and I was really curious to see what they looked like and how they behaved, and that doesn't disappoint. That's also within that arc that we were talking about that we like so much around
Mhm.
issue 11 when they show up and they're now the keepers of the relics of the Jedi, or as they say, the Jedi, and
The Judeo,
the Jedi, and they
the Judeo Christians.
I've never put that together, um, because they were saved by Cade's father, and so to them he's like almost a holy figure or something, and they want him to be responsible for maintaining the artifacts, and that's when he goes into his temper tantrum, which leads to that great like 5 or 6 page argument that we were talking about earlier with Sazin.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess that's one aspect initially that I don't think really clicked in with me until
Oh,
we
the
met
Vuzan
those
Vong, thank
aliens.
you. I
Yeah,
can't. I wanted to just say Vong if I could even think of that, so I had a shorthand, and I couldn't even come up with that. But anyway, good.
No, that's one of those elements that I don't think fully clicked with me until we got it, and that it like until we met them,
Yeah.
because it throws so many like names and like just kind of like sci-fi jargon at you that it like a lot of that just kind of goes in one ear out the other. So it's like, oh, we had this war with this group, and then it just kind of like went, okay, there was this war, there was this war. Oh, okay, I guess it was with these people. Okay.
Well, you're right. Ostrander does a good job of making it as digestible as possible, but like there's so much to keep up with all of that terminology that it still can be a little confusing. And that's not a slight against the book. Like I'm not even really criticizing it. That is like classic, 60s sci-fi novels where there's a certain amount of that you're just going to have to allow for. It's a complicated story, and he does a wonderful job of not giving you everything at once and only giving you details when you need them for the story to progress. But it also never feels too retroactive. Like I'm surprised that there's places where we're given new characters right before they're going to start being important to the story, and it doesn't feel like he just came up with them. It feels like they were always there, and we're just now meeting them because they matter. Like the imperial brother and sister with the guy who thinks he deserves to be on the throne and stupidly thinks that that's what Krait's plan is. And
What
then,
a meathead.
well, he's drawn that way too. He is a meathead.
Yeah.
But
That guy's a dingus.
we do that with the lore with the once again the Vuzan Vong.
Well,
told...
Iron Shell says it's
Yeah.
pronounced Yuzavong. So
you use it.
take that.
Yuzavong.
It's like an insult. You're like,
oh, that's better.
Yuzavong.
Well, somebody wrote Vuzavong. Yuzan Vong. There it is. Sorry. Now I've got it. Now I've got it. So anyway, it is too late to talk about this material. But anyway, when we're first told about them in the first issue, we only get as much as we need. And because of that, I'm not expecting it to get as interesting as it gets. So there's a part of me that kind of wishes I had all that from the beginning, but I know myself with prologue material, like you said, it would be in one ear and out the other. It would be like a crawl. I'm not actually reading the crawl, and if I am, I'm not going to commit any of it to memory. So
what if it has like a there are heroes on both sides.
It's not until we meet them or a little bit before that when those details just start mattering to specific characters that I'm really paying that much attention to it. So, or that I would have started committing any of that to memory. So we early on, all we get is the aliens came from another universe or another galaxy, pardon me, and there was a war, and then Krait took over, and eventually, and then 7 years pass and we get to issue 2. There's 7 years in between the first 2 issues, because the first issue is really just a flashback issue, it turns out.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said earlier, like it almost in that way feels like an event book, and then you have like tie-in books that are like also issues of this series, where it's like you get like your initial like, okay, here's the story in like the broad sense of it, and then as you go you get like your little tie-ins where it's like, okay, like let's take this aspect and expand on that, okay, let's take that aspect and expand on that, and you get new characters through doing that are also important, and then they're important moving forward.
Well, and sometimes they read as fill-ins, and then you'll find out they really matter. The only one that's really kind of throwaway is the Stormtrooper one, but thematically it's important.
And that issue is just weird because they say the word noob like a million times, and that's not a word that I imagine in Star Wars.
This story is so much about the difference and really, I hate this art so much. The difference. And we'll talk about art here in a second. And relationship between the ideas of loyalty and obedience. And this issue really breaks that whole thing down, where you have stormtroopers that are loyal to the emperor, who is actually as close to a good guy as you're going to get for an emperor. We'll find out later that he's not the most likable guy in the world, but he's not Palpatine, right? Like, yeah, I mean, he's a politician that actually wants power. So he's not like he's ruthless, but he's not a horrible person. You know what I mean? Like, or at least he's not like a psychopath. Um, I honestly felt really bad for his personal guard that because it's kind of fun, like he's basically got his own personal Jedis that aren't Jedi but like they're force sensitive, and so it's sort of like the Sith where we've just kind of changed the rules, where you've got Jedi that that aren't actually Jedi but are able to use their force powers in other places. And anyway, he uh, he has a guard, like a personal guard guy, who is in love with his daughter, the princess, or the I guess now former princess because he got dethroned, and he goes to save her, and against the orders of the emperor, and he asked the question outright, blatantly: is loyalty the same thing as obedience? Like, I know this is for the greater good, and the emperor doesn't know what he's doing. I don't think like I have to save his daughter, like of course. And so he goes and saves her, with Cade's help, and then it turns out that there's a good chance that the Sith are tracking them back to the planet that they've been safely like hoarded off on, and they're there in secret, and so it was, maybe Fell was right and they shouldn't have gone and done that, but then, like, at what cost? And so, like, I can see both sides of that, but like in those scenes Fell is kind of the bad guy, right? Like, well, you're not gonna get to marry my daughter now, and I'm gonna put you on the most dangerous possible missions, and I don't care if you die.
Yeah, exactly. No, he's not. I mean, he's better than Darth Krayt, because, like I said, Darth
Oh
Krayt's not
yeah,
great. But
he's
uh,
yeah, he's not a Sith Lord.
yeah, exactly. He's like a step above that. He's just not a great guy either. It's basically like if you're, and obviously there's more sides than this, but it's basically like if you're, I don't know, whoever at the top of your rebellion in the original trilogy was also kind of a jerk face that just wanted power.
Yeah.
Mhm. So
And it's just nice to see Star Wars deal with all of the in between.
yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about art, shall we? It's all over the
Very
place.
inconsistent.
It's real inconsistent. Yeah, this fill-in issue with the stormtroopers that we were talking about, it suddenly just gets really sketchy, and it's obviously a different artist, and I don't have the artist pulled up here.
Yeah, and I can't remember offhand.
I should probably grab that real quick, but it can get super jarring, and sometimes even in the better art, the faces are wonky.
There was also some like Greg Land faces in one of the issues. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember being like, that's questionable.
Yeah, exactly. I am pulling up the main artist here. 1 second. Oh, I don't have time to go through this entire article.
I
Uh,
gotta pay to read the full article.
I mean, generally speaking, like the main artist with this, do you think it's just serviceable, or is it ever impressive? Like, because I think some of particularly the battle scenes in with the lightsaber stuff in the first 6 issues, there's some really pretty stuff with like the Talon fights and all of that.
No, there's some really good art in this book. Like I said, it's very inconsistent. You get stuff that's like, wow, that's not great. are like, oh, that's kind of bad, and then you have issues where it's solid, it's really good.
So apparently it's usually Jan or Jan, I'm not sure, Dersima, who's not a name I recognize. It is
Jan
Jan.
Buscema is definitely a
Jan
Star Wars name.
Dersima. It And yeah, she hasn't worked on anything else that I'm familiar with. But she did a bunch of Star Wars, not just this.
Hmm.
So yeah, she's the main artist on this, and everything else is fill in. Although 8, 9, and 10 is done by a completely different artist, who I'm not seeing right away.
Which
So
makes sense because that's also like spin-off stuff.
yeah, yeah, and some of that stuff gets a little bit more photorealistic than hers. She's a little more pencily.
Hmm. Like 9 and 10, I think it is that like not Mara
Yes, thank you,
Jade.
Chewbacca's lover, Imperial Knights. He keeps correcting me when I'm not using the Star Wars terminology because I can't remember it all. There's a lot. Yeah, when I said Fell's guard guys, yes, Imperial Knights. I just could not remember what we were calling them.
This is how you know Cap is kids. He's like, ah, this thing.
I'm just not enough of a Star Wars guy, and I always get really self-conscious when I have to talk about it, which is part of why it took me so long to finally talk about this stuff. I'm not comfortable with it, even though I really like this material.
It's okay. You're more comfortable having had conversations with women than knowing all of the intricate detail of Star Wars.
Yeah. So this stuff's a totally different. And this is somebody named Wilson. I'll look that up. And the panel layouts are really different.
Hmm. Well, this specific page you have up reminds me of Image, and it also, um,
Sure.
I meant to mention this earlier when we were talking about the technology stuff. That is just straight up like a real gun. Like that is not a Star Wars gun, which this book has in places.
Colin Wilson. Colin Wilson.
I don't know if you had that at all.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry. I was looking stuff up.
No, it's okay. This book has this now and then where like you look at this page that you have, like
Yeah.
that is just a real gun. Like that is not a Star Wars gun.
Yeah, that's true. That looks like it belongs in Predator.
Yeah, no, and this book has that in places. I meant to mention that when we talked about the tech stuff.
Well, you gotta understand, we're far enough in. Remember, Star Wars takes place in a
The
long time
galaxy
ago,
far away, a
in a
long
galaxy
time.
far, far
Yeah.
away. So we're getting closer to the technology that we see what we're doing there. We're doing a thing.
Finally reached the 90s.
Plushie DX, Star Wars has real World War II guns in it. I feel like in the original trilogy, though, there are some guns here and there with stormtroopers that sort of look like real guns.
Possibly, I guess. But I don't know, I guess I'm just so used to
It's
they're
not
kind
all
of made up
blasters.
stuff.
The bigger the guns get, the more like rifles they look. I think
But that's just straight up had like a scope and like the grip thing. I'm surprised there wasn't like a grenade launcher attachment. There's like parts where like people are like putting mags into their gun. It's like, does Star Wars have that? That's the thing I laugh at, with games where it's like you have to reload, but it's like, do they have to reload in Star Wars? I don't know.
they should. I think there might be a power pack thing with Star Wars
They
guns.
mentioned power packs in that Stormtrooper issue, so
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
yeah, because the one person is like a big like crazy gun, and they're like, oh, it takes up more power packs than usual. Oh, there's R2
Yeah,
who
there's
lived
also.
100 years.
I found the hardest issue to get invested in for me was the last one we read was 13, because all I really got from that issue was there's some weird guys from a planet that society this is an interesting idea, but that the society is all about kidnapping people and then making them part of your culture,
Hmm.
and they find the planet that well, we'd set this up in an earlier issue, but Crate knows where Fell is, but the planet is so fortified, and I didn't fully understand why, but it's apparently just really hard to get to him for some reason. And so,
It's like Hogwarts. It's only there if you believe it exists,
oh, is
but
that what it is?
The Sith don't. So
Is it
I don't know.
like the
No, I think
Neverending
it's just
Story where you have to read it? You have to read the story and then you can go there? Is that
yeah. Take a look. It's in a book.
oh, oh okay. But anyway, so all I really got from that is they know where that planet is, and they send some people there, and they fail, and then Krait's like, "I'm gonna get you next time," and that's really all I got from that issue.
Next time, Gadget. It's like that.
Yeah, and like the design of those aliens was really generic, I thought, and there's some,
Hmm.
and there's just a lot of kind of pointless lightsaber battles in that issue, and that was kind of all I got from that.
Yeah, no, I had that a little bit too. Because I read the last three issues at work today, and when I got to the last one, I was like messaging people on Discord about Prey, and it was just like, oh, I got this like last issue to read, and it's just kind of like the weakest one so far. So it's like I gotta push through this a little bit.
It was the only place where my eyes were really glazing over. I mean, I was certainly invested more often, but wishing I had time to like write a lot of stuff down. I mean, I feel like I need like flowcharts.
Hmm. No, exactly. We need like a full like pie chart of this.
Edward Bedore says you wouldn't want to have everything info dumped on you in the first 10 minutes, right? Like a TV show that spends its entire first season setting up three more, which is modern television now. That's sometimes modern television. More often, what I see is a first season that's that's a great like 10, 13 hour movie and then has no stories to tell after that. But you're right, that also happens. But I digress. No, of course not. And like I said earlier, I'm impressed with what Ostrander is hanging on to and waiting to give us later, because I'm convinced that he's got everything mapped out, or he's got enough of it mapped out that he can dupe you into thinking that he's got like every aspect of this worked out for himself, and knows when to give it to you so that you're not overwhelmed. But even still, I occasionally was.
Well, there's just so many characters and like species and planets, and they all have weird names, so it's just like, kind of hard to keep track. And you're like,
This
okay.
this is the kind of stuff that I feel like requires multiple reads. And it's been
Mhm.
too long since I've read it, so I didn't feel like I had another read. Like I really wanted to, I really wanted to sit down and read all of this again, and I just didn't have time today. I wish I had.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, there's definitely stuff.
I could
Even
do
if
a
I were,
little bit more actual story analysis if I had done that. This has been a
Mhm.
little bit more broad overviewy, uh, partly because I just didn't have a chance to look at it a second time. This is difficult to talk about on one read, I think.
Well, yeah, and even I feel like if I were to start reading it now, having only read the first 13 issues, there's stuff I would pick up on that I didn't the first time because I now have more information.
So what other aspects or plot threads or characters, because there's a bunch of stuff we haven't talked about, do you really want to grab onto and talk about for a little bit before we bid everybody farewell? And we're going to do more videos on this, so we'll get back to some things that we didn't bring up this time.
Hmm. I'm guessing moving forward that the like bounty hunter woman that's also Cade's mom, I guess, will come back because
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
weird. Like we set it up like she's going to be like a Mara Jade figure where she's hunting Cade in the same way that Mara Jade was hunting Luke, and then it turns out that instead she's his mom, and
Yep.
then she's like, "Ah, I'm out of here," and then it ends.
Yeah, that seemed really abrupt. But no, she'll be a major figure later on if memory serves.
Hmm. No, that makes sense. Which should have the like, oh, Star Wars, like everyone's got to be related thing because the twist of Empire was so good. But it just kind of like came out of nowhere, not exactly in a bad way, but it was just like, oh, I guess they're related. I didn't even think that was going to be a possibility, but okay.
Yeah, see, like I can't help but just read this like Marvel comics, where like it's just X Men, this is soap opera. Like I'm expecting that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Because from the beginning, it reads real comic book soap opera. And I mean in a good way.
That's why we need more amnesia. Like I said, Cade Yeager should feign amnesia.
Chewbacca's lover, Ostrander, maps everything out before he starts writing. He knows everything that will happen. It definitely reads like an outliner versus somebody that writes, in the moment.
I'd be interested to hear him talk about what his Suicide Squad is like, since that's more like issue to issue.
Yeah.
If that's like a mapped out thing he had when he got on.
How do you think you would have felt reading this month to month? Like if you had to wait longer to get to the next issue?
I'm not sure. I've like never really done the month to month thing with comics. I've always been like a trade reader, so
I don't know why I bothered to ask you that then.
No, well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I would get annoyed reading month to month with just anything. Anything though. So it's like, sorry.
See, I used to be a month-to-month reader, of course. This would be the sort of thing where I would read a few issues, and then I would probably be like, I'm not keeping everything straight and remembering what happens month to month, and then I would let it stack before I read anymore, probably.
Yeah. So what I meant by that was like, I feel like I would be exactly. I feel like I would be annoyed reading like anything modern month to month. Like there's a certain cutoff point where I wouldn't want to read anything month to month.
Yeah, like 90s you probably could have done most.
Yeah, like things. If you're talking about like 60s, 70s, 80s, like stuff where it was more okay, here's like this issue and like this happens and this is the main plot and like there's maybe a B plot and a C plot that sets up the next issue, but that issue is still its own self-contained thing. I could read that month to month, but when you have more stuff that's just like deconstructed and just keeps going, I don't think I would really want to do that month to month.
Sorry, I was just trying to find the name of his mom because I can't remember her name.
What is the name of his mom?
And it's not in this list of characters I've got pulled up here.
Does it not say it in this page you have up?
That's what I'm saying. I can't find it.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were looking at something else.
In this actual page. No.
Rats.
Yeah. Anyway, somebody will tell us.
Anyways, this woman, this Meg Ryan woman, does definitely have a name, probably. I would hope.
So here's a little detail. We're all over the place. That I thought was kind of on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
So we introduced something called, it's an acronym, something called COLDS. So his mom is working with this guy that she's ultimately going to ruthlessly murder, and he's like, the colds are detached, and their circuits will fuse, right? And then only a couple pages, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but it read real on the nose to me. I don't know why this stuck with me. A couple pages later, we get her backstory where she was with Cole Skywalker, and they had and they had Cade, and she's going to run off and leave them, and she's very cold about it. And I was like, is that intentional? Like two pages earlier, you introduced this thing called cold, well, and then she's like the coldest mother ever. That. Like that.
It's a cold detached too. So
yeah, like cold and detached. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't mean to read too far into things, but it was just right before that. It read like weird foreshadowing to me.
She's like Homer Simpson's mom too, with the way she leaves.
It was that whole thing was soul crushing. Like I don't know if you had that, but like that made me feel things. That bothered me. Because she's like, I'm gonna leave and never come back, and what do you want me to be, his mommy? And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, because you are. And then
family is for weaklings.
And then Cole Skywalker goes, well, Cade is sleeping. Are you gonna say goodbye? And she's like, if I say goodbye, I'm not going to leave. And then she just leaves, and I'm like, I don't know, man. That kind of thing. Knife to the chest. I can't have that.
Just wait till we get to
We do that to kids. I can't deal with it.
the Homer Simpson mom stuff in our Simpsons videos.
We'll finally get back to those in the not too distant future. Oh, and we also didn't talk about the wheel. Speaking of
The wheel.
isn't that what they called it? The wheel?
Yeah.
It's on this page here. Speaking of technology that you can't believe is still around. I mean, this is one of the donut ships from the Republic.
It's the Federation donut.
Yeah, and I thought this was a really cool idea. The like neutral site that it's sort of like Babylon 5 or something. It's a space station where like anybody is allowed to go there, and they have a lot of like diplomatic meetings and a lot of like shady business deals and stuff, and as long as no actual violence happens, like anybody can conduct any kind of business there, or it's sort of like the hotel in John Wick or something.
I was thinking of Nowhere from the Comic Guardians too, especially when the guy who runs it comes in and he throws them out. It reminded me of Cosmo.
Well, and I meant to ask you about Guardians earlier because this has some similarities, particularly with in tone, I think, with the Abnett and Lanning stuff. And I was wondering if it tickled your sensibilities at all in that way.
That was the nice thing, is that because we had that the Marvel Comic Con stuff, and I saw like the leak trailer for Guardians 3, and I was like, oh man, I'm really excited. I'm in a Guardians mood. I'm gonna go through that stuff from the beginning, starting with Annihilation. So I just started Annihilation Conquest when we started this, so I was already kind of in that headspace. So it was easier to like slip into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that definitely helped. That it's kind of got a similar flavor to that.
Well, I am excited to keep going with this and reread stuff that is not coming to me right now because it's been so long since I've looked at it. But I know this stuff gets even darker than what we've looked at already. It's going to get brutal before it gets lighter. And I think Cade himself starts to get a little bit lighter, maybe just as it gets real brutal. But we'll see what happens with it. Anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to make sure that we do right now? Because again, I know there's a ton of other aspects, but it's getting real late, and we're probably gonna have to close up shop here in a second.
Well, I mean, I guess the good thing too is we mostly talked about the back half, like what you wanted. So like a lot of the stuff that we didn't get as into the weeds with was the kind of first volume.
Yeah, and I kind of avoided talking about a lot of specifics with that just because I've done it before. So any of that you wanted to comment on or complain about or anything, feel free to. But I've already done all that.
Mm-hmm. No, not really. The first volume, like the first few issues, are a good kind of introduction into this world.
And I think it reads fine as a story by itself. If you like, there's obviously a lot that you haven't gotten to yet, and it's not exactly a complete story. But like, as a first arc in comics, if it's all you read, like you get a good sense of the world and the characters and stuff. And so it would be a fun read for a person that's just kind of reading comics more casually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. No, just overall, the double beat of this and Prey just really got me in a Dark Horse mood, or like classic Dark Horse.
Back when they had licenses.
Yeah, back before Disney took everything they had.
Everything from them, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's kind of weird that the two things we reviewed tonight had that commonality.
Yeah, and both like in that era, like your kind of Alien, Predator, AVP, and Star Wars was like two of their biggest things for a long time.
Yep.
And of course, Hellboy is like their own creator-owned thing, but those two like franchise things were really big.
Well, Austin, thanks a lot for doing this with me, man. Because a little less daunting not having to come in and try to keep all this straight and talk about it on my own. But the plot will just thicken and thicken, and I don't know how much of
Like a
this will
good
be.
gravy. It starts out kind of watery and then it thickens.
I don't think we'll do 13 issues at one time again. I don't think that's smart. If we can take this a trade at a time, we can probably get into the weeds with it a little bit more. And
No, it was good starting here since you've already like doing that here since you already did the first one.
yeah,
But yeah, moving forward, probably
I don't
just
like
volume by
I don't
volume.
want to keep doing it like that. There's it because it's too involved. Like I don't
Yeah.
do that with stuff that's like half this involved.
Yeah, exactly. Cap, what do we have lined up for next week? I don't know if you want to announce both Tuesday and Friday.
Well, Tuesday we
But
are
what do we got?
we have a Punisher trade. Speaking of comics, requested once again by Chewbacca's lover. We're gonna do Punisher Max Widowmaker finally, and then next Friday. I don't think you even know what we're doing yet.
I don't. I know about the Punisher thing. That's why I wasn't sure if you wanted to give like the week in advance
We can do
for
that.
everybody, but it's
I
up to
don't
you.
I don't have the person that requested it up right now, but it's a request from a million years ago, like a really long time ago that I never got to. I'm gonna find like I want to get all the requests knocked out that I've ever like. I feel really bad about it. There's a few things that I just never got to. Uh, Austin, next week you and I have to watch the old South Park movie.
Oh, okay.
We're doing that.
I'm excited to hear you talk about it.
I prepared for it once and then never got to it, and have to do that. So yeah, that's gonna be next Friday.
Yeah, and I've never seen that, so that'll be interesting. I just know famously it has like the most F-bombs dropped in like
Oh really?
a few minute period, at least at the time. Yeah, because there's
Well,
like a whole song.
I
I'm
say
just
I
swearing. I
prepared
don't
for
know.
it. I watched I think like the first 15 minutes of it and then never finished it for whatever reason.
You were like, nope.
No, I think I made the mistake of starting it on vacation or something. Like I was actually kind of enjoying it weirdly, but yeah.
You were like, come on, kids, we're gonna watch this good animated family movie.
No, I know I didn't do that. I was watching it like on a laptop or something, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate you. And thanks for bearing with us tonight because we were a little bit scatterbrained. Like I said, we did this real late. It was maybe not the smartest way to handle this, but we got through it. I hope you had fun. I think we managed to talk about quite a bit of what was here, and we will try to come back to this again as soon as humanly possible. His Predator Skull's back. Anyway, thanks again for being here, and we'll see you again next Tuesday. Oh, next Tuesday. Actually, we might be moving it to Wednesday next week. I'm not sure yet. Austin and I are talking about changing schedules. I don't know if that's going to start next week or the week after. But so stay tuned. I'll let everybody know about that real shortly. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you so very much for doing that. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Goodbye.
Later, folks.